Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Witchy Week Ahead. So, apologies for the possible poor quality of this video. I'm recording this in the evening, so it's 10:15 at night, and I'm recording this on Monday. Look at me again, checking the date, 17th of August. Um, yeah, I don't know if it is the same for you, but particularly today, the eclipse energy, it's just really, really taken it out of me. And I've just been so tired today. And yeah, like lacking in clarity, lacking in motivation. I have got some bits and pieces done for work, but yeah, that's one point. I think I just need to go with it, give into it a little bit. And I had a salt bath, and I read some of my book, and then I went into some yoga actually, and I felt much better afterwards. But yeah, gosh, it's been a week since I did my video last week. Um, I had a sense, of course, that things were going to be intense because eclipses are always really intense. And I'd I'd shared with you that I was going to do some practices at home, to sort of cleanse the home environment and set up some protections and things like that. And I did all of that on the Wednesday. Um, but it's just fascinating. And I think one of the things that's really helpful actually for me anyway, as a um, I hate to use the phrase content creator, but essentially that's that's what I am. Um, to have this reflection each week, because it's amazing what can happen in the space of one week. And yeah, just the devastation again of the wildfires here in England. It's just been awful. And these ones that took place last week on Thursday were really close to home. So you've probably seen on the news. Or of course, lots of you I know are local that watch my videos. So yeah, just the devastation of what happened in Stourbridge last week was awful. But of course, so many other areas around the country were affected as well. So yeah, it's been really heavy. I know quite a few people who've been impacted by the fires in Stourbridge, and yeah, my heart just goes out to the people who've lost everything. Um, and yeah, we just need some rain. We just need some rain and some time to process it all. So yeah, it's been a really, really intense week, and I'm sort of apprehensive about what is coming, the week ahead and in the lead up to the next eclipse, which is going to be the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. Um, so what I wanted to focus on today is some positives. I think I mentioned this last week, that it's really important to balance, the work that we do where we are really leaning in to what is happening and we're witnessing, and we're looking at how we can act, and we're looking at how we can help. And then there's a really important aspect of how we cope with these things, which has to come back to our self-care. And I know that term gets used an incredible amount, but it is so important. And this is really obvious today because I've taught my yoga class this evening at my studio, and just chatting to everybody before and after class, people are anxious and worried and scared and sad for what people are going through. And it's hard to take that on, all the time. Um, and so we need these spaces and moments within our weeks where we can connect with our magic, with our joy, with our creativity. We can connect with our peace, and in this way, we refill, we recharge ourselves, and then we're able to hold space better. We're able to be that light, that we want to see in the world. And again, that is another phrase that is used maybe too often. I don't know. But I still really love that saying, and I think of it often and I share it often, because sometimes the world does feel so, so dark. And I think it is so important to try and be that little bit of good, and to tend to our patch, our part of the world, and to remember that one person alone can't take on everybody's suffering. The only people that can do that are bodhisattvas and enlightened beings. And hopefully one day we will develop that kind of capacity. But I think it's really important to remember that we are human, and um, we get fatigued and it's easy to get overwhelmed. And then it's easy to get into that almost like freeze mode where we feel like I can't watch anything else, I can't take anything else in. Um, and then we kind of completely turn away, or where we just get consumed in it all. So, wanted to start by mentioning all of that. And as I said, everybody who's been impacted and affected by the fires, my heart is with you, my prayers are with you. And yeah, let's just hope for some rain and that this drought comes to an end. So, something that I wanted to share with you, and we actually based our women's circle last night was based around this. I was doing some research last week for my Myth and Magic course, which I mentioned last Monday, I believe, and I was looking at the sort of festivals and the myths of August and of last week in particular. And something caught my attention on Instagram, a post by Annabelle de Boulay, who I love. And she was talking about Nemaralia, which is an ancient festival, an ancient Roman festival, Roman/Greek festival that celebrates Diana if it's Roman, and then Artemis if it's the Greek version of this festival. Now, this festival is something that's quite new to me, so do forgive me if you know more about this festival than I do and anything that I'm saying is incorrect. And you can always tell me as well, because I love to learn and I love to um, deepen my connection to things. And I'm always happy to know if I've got something wrong so I can correct it as well. Um, but yeah, I've run Wild Woman circles. I've been running them for 9 years. Can you believe it? 9 years now. I did my original training with the Wild Woman Project, which I still love so much, and most of my circles are still very much the structure that I was taught in with the Wild Woman Project. And so our Bible, if you like, is the Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I was reading about Nemeralia, and of course, like Diana and Artemis are like the original wild women, the sovereign maiden goddesses that live in these sacred groves, live in the forests. And I've always had this affinity with both of those goddesses. And the ones that show up are very similar in Celtic mythology as well. There's lots of these sort of hunter, maiden type warrior goddesses in Celtic myths and legends as well. So yeah, I was delighted to read about this festival, this 3-day festival in honor of Diana. And this procession that would take place, this torch procession that would take place, where everybody went decorated in flowers and garlands. Even the dogs would have little flower crowns, apparently, because dogs are incredibly sacred to Artemis and Diana. And people would walk to her sacred lake and they would make offerings. So some of these offerings would be flowers, and some of these offerings would be these little clay statuettes. Now, this is something that shows up a lot in Celtic history as well. So if you take, for example, the temple in Bath, which is dedicated to Sulis or Sul. This is one of the things that they found in the temple there is all of these votive offerings, and often they're like tiny little body parts that people have made, and the idea being that they would make a part of the body that needed healing, and then they would take it to the sacred waters and offer it to the waters and um, ask Sulis to heal whatever was ailing them. There's also some sinister elements to that too, because of course humans can be petty. So as much as people would ask for the healing of things, people would also seek vengeance as well, which is quite a big theme that comes up around the temple to Sulis. But as I often say when I'm teaching about Sulis to people, she's not necessarily a goddess of vengeance. We can't measure goddesses against human pettiness. It could just be that that's what people just chose to ask her for. Anyway, I digress. So what I thought would be really lovely, and this is what I wanted to share with you today in this week's offering, is I talk so much, don't I, about Indigenous practices and um, finding things to connect with that are more ancestral and more rooted in the lands in which you live or the land in which you are from. And maybe those two things are the same, maybe they're different. And this element here of working with clay is a very, very indigenous practice of the lands where I am, where in England, in Britain, in the UK. And even though we're taking inspiration from a festival that comes from ancient Rome, as I said, we can see this showing up in the history here with these temple sites and these votive offerings. So anyway, we did this as our craft last night in circle to make these clay items that we could then take to a sacred body of water or something that we've created at home as an altar or even burying in the land as well. So I made this little goddess, which she's still drying actually. She's still a little bit wet, but I'm really happy with her. And my intention with this was she represents the earth mother goddess, and what I feel needs healing is that relationship with the land, that reciprocity, that reverence, that respect. And she really needs our help, doesn't she, now more than ever? And so when that is ready, I'm going to do a ceremony around this and go and take that as a prayer and as an offering. And I just wanted to share that with you because there's so many ways that we can work magically. There's so many ways that we can work ritually. And this ties in really well with the creativity aspect of Leo. And this week is the final week of Leo season. So on the 22nd, the sun will move into Virgo and Virgo season begins. And so this was part of my topic for today was how do you want to honor the last week of Leo season? And how can we lean on Leo, if you like, and the sort of playfulness, the joyfulness, the creativity, the inner child to actually nourish and support us during these times that are so, so challenging. And some of the things that I've been looking to, if you like, have been in that kind of way to like regulate myself, that way to just take a break from worry and from heaviness. And so things like colouring, I've been collecting lots of colouring books. I shared with you the goddess one that I got from the works, but I love this witch colouring book. And I also got recently the pumpkin spice cafe coloring book. But it's such a childlike thing to do, and I've been watching Orla coloring a lot recently, and how she's just loving the process of it, choosing the colors and enjoying like putting different colors together. And there's no sense of um, completion. There's no sense of it being for anything. And I think children are so helpful in that respect, like witnessing their creativity. And then, of course, how that gets dampened and constricted over time. And I'm desperately trying to, stop that from happening. But yeah, just watching her and being like, yeah, she's just doing it because she's enjoying it. She's enjoying the sensation actually of the crayon on the paper and the sensation of the colors. And then when she's finished, she doesn't, you can see that she just doesn't really give it another thought and she's on to the next thing. So that's one invitation this week is how can we lean into creativity, but come away from that tendency that it needs to be for something, that it needs to be a finished piece, that it needs to be shared with anybody, that it needs to be part of our Instagram feed, that it needs to be productive in any way. And we are so transactional now that everything that is very instinctive and creativity is deeply instinctive. I mean, some of the oldest records of what humans were doing was making art, and it's part of who we are. We don't need to create to produce. Sometimes that's valid, and sometimes that's important, and sometimes that's why we do things, but we create because we're creative beings. It's not that creativity is for a set of people who may have gifts and talents, it's for everybody. And this is a massive part of reclaiming ancestral practices again, because if you go from the point of view again of the Celts, art was massively important to the Celts, and you think of the Druids and the bards, and spiritual teachings were actually delivered via art, via poetry. And it's this sense of expression, and people would pray for Arwen, or Imbus, that light of inspiration. And so we've really moved away from that. Art and creativity has now become for a purpose. And the amount of times I see people say this online, and I'm like, thank you for the check-in about that. Just like, your creativity doesn't have to be something that then has to become a side hustle, has to become another job, unless that's really what you want to do. But it's so easy to fall into that, isn't it? Like you make something, maybe something like I've shared here, a little clay thing. And then we're like, oh, well, maybe I could make things to sell and and I'll have a side hustle. And sometimes we think, just chill, just create, because it's part of being human. It's part of regulating our nervous systems. And don't underestimate that either, how impactful creativity is for our nervous systems. Well and truly, I had the most horrendous start to this year with my mental health, and really, really, really bad anxiety and panic attacks and stuff that I hadn't experienced for like 20 years. And art was what got me through. Just sitting and doing these really small doodles and sitting with Orla actually and her pens. And I was like, I can do this and I can focus on this, and it would calm me down and it would regulate me and it would give me a focus. And that's sometimes in a day when I was, in a really dark place, that was all I could do. And it was a real lifeline for me. And so if you are feeling in that way, or you're feeling overwhelmed by all that is going on, then I suggest avoid the doom scrolling and think about nourishing yourself with creativity. And I will keep saying this over and over again. We've got to stop reserving creativity for a set type of person, and that it needs to be productive, because this is such a powerful Leo teaching. And if you think the eclipse was in Leo, so it's shadow of Leo. And I think it's these wounds of creativity and the ways that we shut ourselves down every time we want to express ourselves. We shut it down, we tighten it, we restrict it, we dampen it. And Leo is a sign that really invites us to shine and to not have to justify our creativity and our expression. It's like let it move, let it flow. A little bit like that example I gave a few weeks ago of the re-wiggling of the rivers, the re-meandering of the rivers. So how can we re-wiggle our creativity? And there's a whole realm too, if we bring this into our witchcraft, into our magical practice, there is a whole scene of being an art witch. And I've spent endless hours watching the most beautiful creations with witchy artists, grimoire practices and spells that are done using art and using craft. And it's just so joyful and playful and magical. And so maybe this could be a focus too of this week of like, I'm really going to nourish and support myself with creativity, with joyfulness, with playfulness. And as I keep saying, it's not about turning a blind eye, it's not about gaslighting anybody else or ourselves, but it's about supporting ourselves in these times of upheaval and change and uncertainty as well. So, um, I'd love to hear what, if anything, you do this week to lean into your creativity, to lean into your flow and your expression. I'm definitely going to make some time for colouring. I'm going to make some time for my book journal and my stickers because I love stickers. In fact, let me share with you my little sticker tray because it brings me so much joy. And yeah, the only thing is getting out of the headspace of saving everything for best, which I will do, where I'll buy like lots of these little packs of stickers. And I even create stickers myself. I use some of my own artwork and get it printed as stickers. And I'm like, oh no, that's for that's for some elusive day in the future, this day that's dedicated to best. I'll save that for best, save that for later. And just use the stickers, just use the stickers. The other thing that's been helping me is getting lost in books, and I finished the Between Worlds B&B and I absolutely loved it. It was just really sweet, really gentle. Yeah, a really lovely book. So yes, thoroughly recommend. And this is what I want to do my book journal about. So I need to find some stickers that look like the characters. I need to flick back through and pull out some of the yeah, the pieces that I want to remember and the characters that I want to remember. And I've just started reading another book, which is called Hester, which I borrowed from the library, which is brilliant. And I will tell you more about that when I've finished it because um, it's quite epic. It's quite a lot in there. But yeah, it's brilliant. Let me pick a card for this week. And let's just look at the energy of this week as well. So today is waxing crescent moon. So energetically speaking, in terms of lunar energy, the energy is rising after the moon was dark. Then it's gone into the new moon solar eclipse. And now we're in that phase where the light is returning, the lunar energy is rising. And Wednesday, we move into the first quarter moon, which is that signal that we are a week away from the full moon. And this is a full moon in Pisces, which is never easy. because Pisces is never easy, and it's a lunar eclipse as well. So this is another reason why I think self-care and supporting yourself this week is really important, because eclipses are no joke. And being in between the two as well is really difficult, because the themes that come up around an eclipse, as we talked about last week a little bit, is the endings and the beginnings. It's a massive time of transformation, but it's a kind of feeling like things are being deconstructed to then be reconstructed. But often it's not until the eclipses have actually passed that we get a sense of the whys and the whats and the um how everything's been pieced back together. So it's very, very much that liminal space, which is uncomfortable for us because it's the not knowing. And it can be really hard, particularly if there's a lot of endings or there's one big ending that's happening, to know that something else is coming. It takes a lot of trust and a lot of centeredness and a lot of grounding to navigate that. And of course, it impacts us all differently depending on our birth charts, our personal astrology. So yeah, it's not eclipses are not easy. And this is one of the reasons I spoke so much last week about not opting out of whether things impact us or not. Eclipses impact us emotionally, energetically, physically, and you only have to talk to people, at the moment, to get a sense of that. Like everybody's like, I feel drained, I feel weird, I feel emotional. There's things coming up from the past. This is functioning whether we whether we subscribe to it or not. Um, Definitely have a look at what was going on for you 18 years ago, because they work in an 18-year cycle. I spoke to my mom because I couldn't remember what was going on um, when I was 22. And bless her, she managed to find like photographs, and then I think maybe like diary entries or emails or whatever that she managed to piece together. And she was like, this is what you were doing. And so um July 18 years ago, I'd been backpacking around Europe, and then the end of August 18 years ago, was I emigrated to Sydney, which was huge, a huge, huge change. Couldn't really have had a bigger change that year. But what is really fascinating to me is, I think, if my memory is correct, and I need to clarify this somehow, I think that window of time between getting back from backpacking and then flying to Sydney to emigrate, I think was when I received my first ever Reiki treatment. And up until that point, I, apart from yoga, which I was going to yoga more for the physical side of things, like I'd started practicing yoga when I was about 18, 19, and it was recommended because I used to dance and I used to figure skate, and it was recommended to do yoga for stretching. Little did I know what a massive practice it is. Um, so at that point, I didn't really have any connection to any spiritual practice. Um, and if my memory serves me correctly, I think that August was when I went to receive a Reiki treatment for the first time, and I was really resistant about it. I'll put the link. I talk about this in an episode of my Reiki podcast. I talk about this whole journey. So I'll put the link to that under this video. If you want to listen to me any more than this, which you might not. But I put the whole story anyway in there. But so if that's true, then for me, this 18 years loop is basically the entirety of my spiritual journey, which is massive, epic. So yeah, I will research that further and let you know. Um, Oh, I think this is the same card. This is the same card that we had, get it in the light, a few weeks ago. So this is from the Seasons of the Witch deck, and it's collecting seeds. Remember that what was once planted has grown, and now it's time to sow new seeds. Which is that's quite interesting based on what I was just saying there, like that whole 18-year cycle. Like I could look at it in that way, couldn't I? Of like, yeah, that's like the seed that was planted of going for that Reiki treatment, and then how that's kind of created this entire journey. Let's see what else it says. Collecting seeds is a critical step in maintaining a thriving garden year after year. Of course, you could buy seeds at the start of each growing season, but there is no need with a bit of thoughtful planning and a small amount of effort. Collecting seeds appears when there is a need for more planning, mindfulness about your future, and investing in your long-term growth. All too often, there is a significant push to achieve one singular goal, and once you've done so, you're left wondering what comes next. How do you build upon the success you already have? You are being asked to look ahead to gain clarity about where your life is heading from here. Receiving this card is a sign that your current growing season is coming to a close. Naturally, there are some things that will remain in your life for years and require less effort as time goes on, while other things will reach their natural conclusion and make space to plant new ideas and pathways to achievement. Don't wait until your next growing season to figure out what to grow, or you could miss the next harvest altogether. Lots to take away from there, I feel. And I'm going to keep working with this deck. I love this deck so much. So I'm going to be working with this until autumn equinox, because I like the time. I like to have the time to work with these decks. I don't just like to use them for a week or a few days around the wheel of the year point. So I haven't chosen a crystal and a plant this week because I wanted to really talk about this theme of creativity. I wanted to talk about Nemaralia. I wanted to talk about Leo. So yeah, rather than those magical allies of plant and crystal, think of your creativity as a magical ally. And I would love to hear what you end up doing. And yeah, thank you as well for everybody that's taken time to comment on previous videos or message me directly. It really does mean a lot, just to know that their videos are landing and that people are appreciating them. And it's always just really kind as well to listen to what someone's got to say. And so I appreciate you so much, even if it's two people, one person, two people, three people that watches. It's a real kindness to listen to what someone's got to offer. So thank you so much. I've almost finished putting together the Morgan Le Fay course. So I'm going to hopefully get that out next week for Virgo season. So it will be open to register, and then it will open up in September. And the way that I've set it up is that you'll have lifetime access to it, but I've done it so that it opens up each week with different content to follow along with the moon cycle, and then also to honor the autumn equinox as well. So there's lots of different parts of Morgan to work with, and so I've created this flow, hopefully, with the lunar cycle of how to work with her in different ways depending on what the moon is doing, and then how to work with the autumn equinox, which one of its names is the Feast of Avalon. And of course, she is a priestess of Avalon. So yeah, more about that soon. I will keep you posted. And I think I'll leave it there for today. I'm going to do some colouring. So thank you everybody for listening, and I will see you next week. Okay, and we'll talk about the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, and of course, whatever unfolds this week. So, yeah, go gently, honor your creativity, and stay magical.